Welcome everybody to the Tuesday Night Keystone Big Book Workshop. I am Rob Kay, recovered alcoholic, sobriety date October 11, 2013. This workshop is facilitated by Tony R and Katie J. We'll keep everybody muted during the workshop except for the facilitators. Please note that we'll be taking questions after the meeting, so please write them down so you don't forget them. Any inappropriate conduct will not be tolerated and you'll be removed by one of the co-hosts. Have a great meeting. How we open this meeting is with the set-aside prayer. Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, this book, my disease, these steps, and especially about you, dear God, so that I might have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me to see the truth. Tony, it's all yours, sir.
Right on. Recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Sobriety date's April 8, 1989. I'd like to welcome anybody new or coming back, or those who've been struggling, and those that are here to support the meeting. I know a lot of you has been through this, and it's really good to see you being a part of this Zoom experience, right? It's different, isn't it, right? But the beauty is we get people from all over the world, and we get to carry a message to a lot of people that probably would not have the opportunity in their small towns or villages or cities, that they could kind of join us and kind of walk through the experience of the first 100 men and women, because really that's what we're kind of looking at, right? So we're getting the guidance of the experience of those that put this together, and all we really are is kind of guides to this thing. We get to talk about our experience along these lines also, and that's the key, right? Yeah, we get knowledge from this thing, but the big thing is the experience. So we're just finishing up We Agnostics, which is a phenomenal chapter. How many people finding this chapter a little more insightful than a quick read? Right, we see that there's a lot of information there, right? And when it's laid out the way it is, it kind of cuts it down to the basis. But we're gonna kind of tie it all together. And so on page 24, they kind of talk about this thing in a way that as a reader, you kind of, it gets your attention. By the time you get to page 24, this thing should start getting your attention. How many people kind of would concur to that? That the illness component of alcoholism is really a lot different than what we thought or what we heard in meetings, right? We see it's two different things altogether. And this one seems a little more severe than what we hear in meetings. Right? In meetings, we get it like almost like a gaslighting effect to the severity of this thing, right? And that's how we're being gaslighted within our own fellowship as to the severity of this thing, and also the misinformation on the idea that we can do something about it on our own power, right? And that's why so many people are confused when they keep on relapsing. Right. And when they look at everything they've done, they kind of go, well, look, I've done this, I've done that, I've done all this stuff. I'm in 12 and 12 meetings. I'm reading Drop the Rock. I'm doing all these things. Right. And they're baffled why they can't get sober. Anybody been like that, is like that. Oh, right. And so when we sit there in that moment of confusion, we're really trying to assess our human problem and alcoholism, but we don't know that, right? We're trying to think, well, why can't I get this? Why can't I? We kind of think it's one and the same thing, right? Like I am alcoholism, but we realize it's two different components. So in the bottom of 24, they're doing a summary of the second symptom that places us beyond human aid. And we all know what that is now. It's the malady that centers in the mind. And when you use that terminology, you should finish that off, because a lot of people think you're talking about the spiritual malady, right? Because that's what they get taught, right? We're alcoholics because we have a spiritual malady. And we find out that's not true at all. We become sick, but we'll find out later that's as a result of resentment, fears, and harms, right? Any human being conducting themselves in that manner is going to become spiritually sick, right? So we see that's the human dilemma. What we used to use for our human dilemma was a drink. How many people used to experience the promises when they took a drink? Yeah. That a new freedom, a new happiness, regardless of what was happening around them, until the point where they pass out, black out, right? Until that fine line, and anybody able to stay on this side of that line?
Really
Oh.
close.
Really close, really close. And
Feels
then you
like
have,
it's really close.
that's right. Then you have the right to remain silent, which good luck with that one, right? In hindsight, what happens? So they talk about if we never took a drink, we never triggered the allergy, right? And we never experience all those consequences associated with a person that drinks too much. So we see that we don't have a consequence problem. What we have is the inability to control the amounts we drink. Would we concur with that? Would we agree with what they're saying?
Yeah.
But the problem is we keep on drinking again, right? We don't learn our lesson, right? We don't see the danger in what we're about to do. We keep on going back to that drink again. Anybody here?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what's happened to us. How many people find themselves regardless? How many people have had some pretty horrific relapses here? And how many people said never again? But always again, right? Most of us have a again story. I'm coming back again. This happened again, right? It's a continuance, right? It's like my spot. I remember my spot. I was sharing in a meeting once. He says, "Whoa, wait a minute." After, right? He used to catch me always after the meeting. He says, "Oh, that was a profound share," and I would feel good for a second. Then the loaded gun would come, right? He says, "Let's just get one thing straight. You keep on telling people what you used to be like, what happened, what you're like now. Let's going to meetings is not the change that we need, or reading the 12 and 12 is not the change we need. So your story is what you used to be like, what you're still like, and what you continue to be like." Right? There's no, you're still waiting for the what happened. You always ask what happened, but that's not what that's not the what happened we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That state of confusion, like what happened, is not what they're talking about and how it works. So this is the kind of ties it nicely together. So when
Bottom of 24, I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's Katie. When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid.
we see that now, what when this sort of thinking, this malady that centers where in the mind, you can't see, feel, and touch it. It's a phenomenon that they go on to explain. Remember, it's something that parallels with our sound thinking. It's not us. You hear people say, "Oh, my best thinking got me here." No, alcoholism got you here. You always try to combat that thinking. You're always in confusion of what it is that got us here. We came here because we're baffled why we keep on doing the same thing all the time. Anybody? Right? So if I never took a drink, I wouldn't have the story that I have. Anybody? If you were able to stay stopped, then you wouldn't have came to AA. So AA is designed for relapsers, people that can't stay sober. So what is it that places us beyond human aid? Is this malady that centers in the mind? Yes, we all agreed on that? Okay, yep. Go ahead.
He has probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics throughout history.
And within our own fellowship and within our own story, we confirm what they're telling us to be true. Because otherwise you'd argue with it now. So no, from the first time I said I was never going to drink again, I've never drank again. So you're the given good reason group. And under any and all conditions can keep yourself sober. This book isn't talking to you anymore then.
Yeah.
You probably stopped reading a while ago, right? Because this book's full of shit, right? As long as I don't pick up, I'll be okay. How many people are hoping that?
Yeah.
Right? Just talk to yourself. There's a conversation, right? See it through, right? Just have accepted. You hear all this bullet point catchphrase sobriety stuff infiltrating our fellowship. Sounds nice, but it does shit for the alcoholic. Right? Why is that? Well, let's continue reading.
But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations.
So there was a change somewhere along in history that started to create a new story for legions of people who were dying of alcoholism. And they talked about that in the doctor's opinion. Remember when Bill came along, his third time in treatment, not his first time, not his second time, his third time in treatment, he acquired certain ideas that he put into practice. Did he come up with those ideas by himself?
No.
Somebody, he acquired them. Somebody passed that on to him. And that's our job in the fellowship. Somewhere along the line, we're telling new people to figure it out. No, our job is to carry this message to them, not for them to find it. Big difference.
Right.
Most of us wouldn't find this message, you know, with both hands attached to our ass. We would never find it. Like, what am I looking for? Right. And I was like Bill, like baffled, right? Until Lebby showed up and it was a demonstration of this thing. And it is kind of, so here we go.
So many want to stop but cannot.
Why? Because of the malady. We want to stop. These people don't want to drink anymore. So we're not talking about people struggling with the obsession of the idea that they can get away with drinking. How many people knew that long ago that they can no longer safely drink anymore?
Yep.
So we want to stop. I don't want to do that anymore. How many people been there? How many people passed that line? I don't want to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people found themselves doing it? Now there's a problem. So, but the person that doesn't understand that is the ones that could quit based on good reason. The gift of desperation. You ever hear that?
Mm-hmm.
I was given the gift of desperation. No, you were given a solution.
Totally.
Not the gift of desperation. Then Bill would have got sober the second time in treatment, wouldn't he? No words can tell the loneliness and despair. Quicksand surrounded me and every. I met my match. I've been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. What I wouldn't give, but that was over now, right? He was resigned to the fact that he was going to die now. He almost welcomed the idea because of the pain, the agony, and the shit we cause people. Anybody been there, done that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of baffling, isn't it? So many want to stop but cannot. Even within our own fellowship, I go on these Friends of Bill and all these different groups. I try to help people, encourage people, and you see it over and over. I've relapsed. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And then what people say to them, you could see that they don't understand the basis of alcoholism. What they're saying to them, really, you know, don't wait. Don't leave till the miracle happens. What miracle?
How?
Yeah, how does it, if it just happened by osmosis and going to meetings, then we would have changed how it works by now, wouldn't we? Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly gone to meetings. Or people say, oh, I relapsed because I stopped going to meetings. Well, what do you tell somebody like me that just did 360 meetings in 90 days and relapsed after the noon meeting?
Yep.
This is what you tell somebody that like me. Here, let's take you through this so you can understand what you're up against.
Yep.
And the more you understand this, the more our solution will make sense, right? How many people have been following along and it kind of made good sense why all that stuff didn't work for you anymore?
Yep.
Right? Meetings are a vehicle to hopefully one of us can get a hold of you to 12-step you into a course of action. Did Bill find Ebby or did Ebby find Bill?
Ebby came to Bill.
Right? And same with those guys that went and visit Ebby when he was incarcerated. Some people wouldn't carry the message to him. You hear people say, oh, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Not in AA. When the teacher's ready, he goes find the student.
Totally.
Big difference, right? I didn't even know I was getting into this thing when I got into it because the people who 12-stepped me conned me into this thing. They kind of misled me and saved my life, right? Okay, some of us really need to be really misled because we're really too smart for our own good, right? I know sobriety. I know. There is a solution, thank God, and we're not it. Go ahead.
There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation.
The process. So they're talking about step 2 here. There is a solution, but it's outlined through the rest of the steps. It's successful consummation, right? Most of us want this without doing the work. Anybody? How many people want to be their own solution? Right? Just stay on guard. Watch out for triggers. Watch out for this. Watch out for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so that's our first obsession, is the idea that I could fix me with me and come up with my own ideas as a program, my program. You hear more people are saying that in our fellowship. It's mind-boggling, my program. There's so many programs in our fellowship now. If you're new, it's kind of confusing. That's why we read how it works at most meetings. Some meetings they're disregarding that now altogether, and we're just reading acceptance, right? But that's another story, right? Don't get me started. So it's our job to carry this message. So why isn't this message being carried at the way AA was designed? It's because we have more new people, or more people that don't need this than need it. So the only person dying of alcoholism in AA is the alcoholic. And all these other people are looking at them wondering what our problem is. Well, we were able to do it. We were able to stop. We were able to do all these things based on self. Why can't you? I guess you don't want it. Right? And we notice here that these people got sober as a result of a course of action. It just didn't happen.
Right.
Right? It's like sitting in an airport. You can sit there all year. You ain't going nowhere unless you got a ticket to fly, an itinerary. You meet a lot of great people. Huh?
And a negative COVID test.
And a negative COVID test. That's right.
And then another one. Anyways.
Oh boy. Stay close. Keep reading.
But we saw that it really worked in others.
There's the catch. We saw it really worked in others. So if you have a group of people now within our fellowship that haven't done this and they're staying sober and you're new, it'd be confusing how they're staying sober. And it's not something new, because I spent 11 years in and out of meetings in Ontario and BC when I got out here, living in Alcoholics Anonymous, trying to get sober. And I see it's working in other people, but they're not the same type of alcoholic I am. Why do you say that? Because they're staying sober and I'm not. I'm trying to get sober the same way they have, and I can't do it. I'm sitting in 12 and 12 meetings. I'm sitting in the Valcos. I'm sitting in other people's ideas on how to do this. Wally P, this. I'm sitting in all these groups with people's different idea on how to do this, or their influence on how to do this, but I've never been taken through this. And then when I got presented this, right, over 32 years ago now, I got taken through the way it was laid out and the design of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have never looked back. So I'm coming up to 44 years in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and sober as the result of this course of action, what they're talking about here. Right? I've never met anybody who's ever gone through this, who understands the problem, the solution as they did, and did the same course of action that they did, who's ever relapsed, including myself. So rarely, right? And those who don't seem to last very long is usually somebody's changed the recipe along the way. Somebody had a different idea or different way of doing it, or implemented some different stuff that's not with this recipe. It worked for them, doesn't mean it'll work for us. So you got to remember that the people that put this together all agreed that this would be the most inclusive way of getting this thing. Right? And it's open to all who seek. So it's really divinely put together that we're able, that the grace available to us will find us. And that you don't have to go looking for it. It will find you if you're willing to go through this process. It's pretty wild when we look at what we're saying. So these people that went before us, there's a common theme in their story. People who were like us, they said they were hopeless. They came to believe and did certain things. They entered a relationship with a power greater than themselves. They maintain that through steps 11 and working with other people. What do they maintain? Is the daily reprieve that gives them a life beyond anything they could ever imagine. So their sobriety is a byproduct of the relationship with a power greater than themselves. It's not a byproduct of their relationship with themselves. There's two groups of people in AA: those who are solving their own problem, and those who have found a relationship with something greater than themselves based on those that went before them. When we saw others solve their problem, it kind of took away that kind of, because remember when Bill was sitting with Ebby?
Yep.
His ideas of miracles were revised right then and there. Something shifted, right? Because he was trying to get sober for 5 years at that time. right? He'd been to treatment twice. And his third time in treatment, what was different is that he had a course of action that his friend implemented or showed him, right? And his friend promised when these things were done, he'd have the elements of a way of living that answered all his problems, not some of his problems, all his problems, right? But the first problem that has to be eliminated is my problem with alcoholism.
Yeah.
I have to undergo a psychic change or spiritual experience, a shift in my psyche where this problem, this malady is removed. But I still am left with my biggest problem, me. And that's where I apply these spiritual principles so I can create through this course of action a sense of ease and comfort. I could create the utopia, the safe harbor I've always looked for. It doesn't make sense in the beginning, but once you experience it, you have the same thing they're talking about. I concur with what they're saying here. And somewhere along the line, you're going to get your feet knocked out from under you and you're going to be rocketed into the fourth dimension. We like being rocketed. We like being knocked back in our seats, don't we? Huh?
Yep.
How many people remember when they took a shot and their nostrils almost blew up? Like, we like that kind of shit. Now, you take a drink and if your nostrils don't flare as you're drinking it, you got the wrong drink, right? Anybody?
Yep.
I need that same kind of effect in my sobriety. I need that. Look, I just got goosebumps. I need that. That's 32 years later. I'm still getting this shit and more.
Yeah.
Right? I'm hooked up with the main guy, but keep going.
All right. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we have been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved.
Underline that. The problem had been solved. What problem? You got a pen and paper beside you?
Yep.
What problem? What problem has been solved? What have they been talking about? What are they drawing our attention to? What problem? The problem that centers in the mind, because as long as that's still present, I'll have an alcoholic mind.
Mm-hmm.
If this problem has been solved, that means I no longer have an alcoholic mind. People lose their shit when you say that. I do this because I'm an alcoholic. No, you do that because you're an asshole. You don't do that because you're alcoholic. Your living skills don't have you living a different way. You do this because you're immature. You do this because you don't have the life skills necessary that the rest of the people your age have. Time to grow up, right? Pay your rent. Well, looking for a plaque. Hey, I paid my rent again. You're supposed to if you live there.
On time. Today, first thing.
I mean, they're great achievements for people like us, right? The reward of doing it should be the reward, right? Okay. So the problem had been solved. If it's solved, is it a problem anymore?
No.
So I'm not dealing with it anymore. You hear people say, every morning I wake up with untreated alcoholism. Oh boy, can you sponsor me? Like, really? So every morning I go out to my car and all the tires are flat. How long would it be before I was out of my mind with that? I'd be like nuts. Every morning flat, but it's okay. I'm happy to be alive. Like, no, solved, done, fixed.
Very cool.
Okay, there was nothing.
There was nothing left for us to do. There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet.
Katie says that in her story. I love it. She's going to treatment and it's just, well, what else can we do? She goes, oh, what else can we do? Right? Like, if we had something left to do, would you be doing this? Let's get honest here.
Yes.
How many people's tried everything? Everything. It's like now, like what I love about this is the only people with long faces is those who haven't experienced it, right? Like, I love Susan. She's smiling at the beginning of the meeting now. She wasn't that way when she got here. What's wrong with these people, right? Then we watched this transition happen through this process. Like I could go through the whole list here. When I remember when you guys came here, a lot of you had that face that looked like you're about to start your life sentence. Okay, I'm ready. Oh, one day at a time. like, come on, how many people? Right?
Yep.
We think AA is a life sentence. Oh boy, gonna be sober. Yay. Right. And then we see this transition happen. These people, what the hell are they so excited about? Right? 32, like mind-boggling, 3 months, 6 months. What are they so excited about? Right? An experience. Right? And then now they're getting, see, now they picked up this spiritual kit of tools. And how do they describe this thing? Go ahead. I'm excited about this, man. Get excited, right? Get in the car. Go ahead.
Okay. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed.
Yeah, like that's an experience. You can't describe it. I remember this lady once sitting in a meeting. She goes, before I had this experience, I looked for all the explanations in the world to try to explain it. Once I've had it, no explanation was necessary after that. And that's what we're saying. That's why it says it's not like a dope deal. Here, try a bit. And if you like it, you can have the whole thing. It's kind of like, did I just say that out loud? Sorry. It's kind of like, wow, I really like what these people are experiencing. You ever watch people remember when you were younger, you watch all these adults having fun and blah, at the beginning of the night, they're all drinking, smoking and carrying on. That looked really appealing, right? So you associate the fun with the drink and the smoke and all that other stuff, right? That was the key, was that. Well, here they're saying there's something else is the key that enables them to experience this. Right? It was the attraction that had you working towards your demise without even realizing it. You went in it wholeheartedly with the idea that it would bring about some relief. Remember the first time you felt the magic in a drink? How many people remember that? Not the first time you had a drink. The first time you felt the magic, where it created a click, a shift, and it seemed to solve your problem, right? I don't know if it solved it, but you just didn't give a shit anymore, right? Anybody? The problem was still there. You just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Give me another drink. And then you're in the moment, you're living in it, and they call last call or the night's over. It's like, where did time go? You're right where your feet were, living the dream. Anybody? And the dream started turning into a nightmare. And you try to get back to that place, it wasn't working anymore, but you couldn't stop yourself from doing it anymore. It's not fun. The party was over a long time ago. Nothing funny about our story anymore, but I can't stop it. Here, they're offering us a new experience based on the experience that I don't want my experience anymore. I don't want my story anymore. Yours guys' story looked way more appealing than mine. Yes? Yep. To be rocketed into the fourth dimension as an observer. You said, what the hell you're talking about? As those who have experienced this, it's quite the ride, man. It's mind-boggling. It keeps us here, keeps us moving forward, right? Go ahead.
The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards our fellow, towards God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves.
Which is really cool, right? And then as you go through the fourth step, you'll see a whole bunch of transitions start to happen. Then you do your fifth. And then you have a look at, you revisit these ideas of the stumbling blocks in your six, and you look at 7 on the hope of the reconfirming of your 3, and then you move into 11, and you start taking care of your 8 and 9s, and you're working with other people, and all of a sudden you're having the recipe for a way of life that's absolutely wonderful. You're matching calamity with serenity. You find peace. You find that place deep down within. Right, you know where the spiritual structure lies within you, and that was the homework, right? So we'll just finish here.
If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there is no return from human aid, we had but 2 alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could.
And you know how many people do that within our fellowship?
Mhm.
Hoping against hope, blotting it out, right? Because they don't take the course of action to create a change. They don't know that they're in between drinks. They don't know what we're having is their illness is lying dormant. What is the malady? That when it happens again, they'll have no defense against it. We know that now. We've tried all that. How many people try to sit dormant in a meeting, hopefully that our illness was in the parking lot? It wasn't a part of us.
Yeah.
That when my illness talks to me, I'll know what to do now. We realize that our illness doesn't talk to us.
Mhm.
Our illness doesn't say anything. But when it takes over, we don't even know it's taken over
Mhm.
until we find ourselves drinking again, baffled. Right. And so that's what we get. So when we get to that place, one was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. How many people tried that? As best they could.
Mhm.
And the other, which we didn't like so much,
And the other to accept spiritual help.
go ahead.
This we did because we honestly wanted to and we're willing to make the effort.
Why? Because we know now that, you know what, I'm suffering from an illness, right? And it's not about acceptance. It's not about surrender. It's the idea that I need to embark in the same course of action they did if I'm going to survive this thing that has me. I don't have it.
Right.
Right? That I could hide, I could lie dormant, I could try not to, but it's just sooner or later, tick tock, right? It's going to have. So when we got into We Agnostics, which was really cool, which let's go over here to 44 and we're going to hit some highlights here. That on 44, we seen what the preceding chapters were for,
Mhm.
right? And they don't have this statement in any other literature in Alcoholics Anonymous. They don't have this in Living Sober. Living Sober was not designed for people to get sober with. It was designed for people who were already sober through this course of action. It was designed for a long time, for people who've been around a while, who's already achieved sobriety.
Right.
Not designed to get you sober. It was designed for people who are sober through this course of action. The 12 and 12 is not designed to get you sober. It's designed for people who were already sober through this course of action. It's to deepen and broaden your understanding of the principles or the group of ideas. It's a group of essays based on this teaching here or this course of action. It's Bill and this other guy's experience of having gone through this course of action. They're expanding on these principles or ideas 13 years afterwards. If you're a carpenter for 13 years and I'm just learning the trade, there's no way I'd be able to achieve what you've achieved. 13 years worth of craftsmanship. I have to develop the basics to get me to the beginning of that skill set.
Right.
Does that kind of make sense? So like my expertise where I work, it allows me certain things, like when I went back to the movie industry because of COVID. And my skill set has me on-set carpenter. It has me location, has me where new people can't do that. Even though they have the basis understanding, they don't have the skill set to do that job. There's just too much involved. So that would be like me writing a book, right? I got in the industry in 1998. So I got over 20 years in the industry off and on. So somebody new coming in, how would they be able to get that? They could work with me, but they wouldn't be able to get that. Does that kind of make sense? So we see that's the purpose of the 12 and 12. So the purpose of the big book is to share their experience. And we see that what they talk about here is the explanation of alcoholism, which is in any other book. Right? So this explanation of alcoholism isn't in the 12 and 12. It isn't in Living Sober, right? The instructions that they laid out as an example of what they did is found where? In the big book.
Mhm.
This is our basic text. But what happens is people who don't know that or don't need to do this, they find the 12 and 12 very interesting because they're able to keep themselves sober and apply. Toronto is 90% that way. It nearly killed me. So guys like me coming in trying to get sober, they have me sitting in a 12 and 12 meeting and I'm dying of alcohol. I just can't get it. Like I said, my last relapse came out in 87, lived in Alcoholics Anonymous, puking green bile, living in AA. I'm doing my last relapse in 89, right? In April 89, I just finished doing 360 meetings in 90 days because I relapsed previous to that, which I did another 360 meetings or whatever. I was going 4 or 5 meetings a day for 2 years.
Jesus.
I was in 4 12 and 12 studies. I sat through a Novelco, which they had so much shit involved that I didn't know what the hell. I didn't know Novelcos were designed for people who were in jail, people who could also work on themselves. So a lot of self-sufficiency infiltrate our fellowship on better ways to do this, not implying God.
Right.
A real relationship, right? And that's my experience, right? So at 3 months, I was doing fantastic because I'm running a 12 and 12. I'm sponsoring some guys, not knowing, ignorant of the whole thing. And then I relapse again. And then somebody intervened. I believe God sent somebody to me like they sent to Ebby, right? I put that out to the universe because I knew I was going to die. This guy 12-stepped me in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for the first time in 11 years, I understood what I was up against. It's just kind of mind-boggling considering that I'm already here looking. And I'm not alone in that experience.
No.
It's mind-boggling that the message has gone so far left, like so far this way, that when we talk about it as the way it's laid out, we're the problem people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is not the only way. Are you in AA? Yes, then it's the only way in AA. Well, there's more than one way to get sober, but you're here, right? You're here? Then you should be passing this message on, not your message on,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have, as a responsible member of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's our job, responsibility to carry this message, not my message, not my program. It's our program, right? There's my moment. Okay, in the preceding chapters.
Just a moment. In the preceding chapters, page 44. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something of alcoholism.
Right, for the first time. How many people first time?
Yep.
So we see I never did step 1 before I got here, or before I got through this. I suffered from step 1 before I got here. Nobody in my 11 years of in and out, when I sat with my buddies drinking, ever went to me, well, Tony, no wonder you can't stay sober. You suffer from a malady that centers in your mind. Unless you have a psychic change or spiritual experience, you'll continue to come here every week, regardless of your soul emotes not to. And when you take a drink, Tony, geez, you trigger the phenomenon of craving. And that's why you seem to drink a little more than the rest of us, but we all drink the same. All my buddies did. If you didn't drink like me, I never hung around with you. Because you normal drinkers, we're the problem drinkers. We're the only group of people that look at normal people like they have a problem. We're the only group of people that make fun of normal drinkers. Anybody?
It's true.
You watch someone have a couple and they had enough, you think, what's that person's problem? Drink up till you start puking, keep drinking. Okay, so we learned about alcohol. I know what it is and isn't. And I realize it's 2 symptoms. Then they talk about, if I have this condition, I may be suffering from a spiritual experience, which only, now, to be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis is not always easy alternatives to face. Maybe suffering from an illness, which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And then they reiterate why, if a mere code at the bottom, we've gone through this in great detail. I'm going to go to where we are. Right, was sufficient, a lot of us would have recovered long ago. If those ideas of just surrendering, just having acceptance, the gift of that, all this shit we hear mainline speakers talking about, that this is my thing, that heavy drinkers are asking them to speak because it caters to them and not to the alcoholic.
Right.
Right, because more people are being able to stay sober by not doing this in AA than those that are. What makes you say that? Because this message is being watered down and diluted to such a state that we're telling new people just don't drink and go to meetings. Why do we say that? Because you don't have a solution sufficient enough for them. You're hoping that one of us will get a hold of them before they die.
Mhm.
We got 1 hour to carry a message, right? 1 hour for us to carry a message to them, right? Not how self is fixing self, but that's another rant. So then we see that lack of power is our dilemma. And we understand what they mean by that to create the shift on 45, that we had to find a power which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than us, obviously, but where and how will we find? Well, that's what this book is about, right? Takes care of all debates. So as we go through this, we start realizing that the basis of this thing is what's motivating us is we see what's available to us by the demonstration of other people and those that wrote this book. Yes? So if you just wrote this book, you see that there's a solution here experienced by these people. But I'm having problems with this thing. So we see the basis that I need in step 2 is to believe that there is a power greater than myself. I don't have to have a relationship with this power. I don't have to have anything more with the willingness to believe. So what makes you say that? Well, let's go over to the basis of this thing. The fundamental outline is they talk about here. Here we go. On page 47. We need to ask ourselves.
Middle of the page, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
So what we're doing is getting a new conception. Whose conception? Their conception. What's the conception that we're being given here? Is the forming or devising of a plan or an idea. Right? So we're given a new plan and a new idea. Whose idea? Their idea. Whose plan? Their plan. My willingness to participate in this, in the saving of my own life, is required. What's required of me is just the willingness to believe that there is something greater than me. Can I say so? Yes. So then it's too simple. I mean, it's that simple. It's that simple, right? So then we go over here when we talk to page 53, which is one of those things that get bastardized within our fellowship because they see a question mark and people think it's for them to answer the question. It's not for them to answer the question. The book answers the question. And what's the question, right? It says, when we became, go ahead.
When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that God is either everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What is our choice to be?
Question mark. They're going to answer that stuff. They're going to say, relax here. It's not that black. Relax. Let us finish the idea here. Because a lot of people go, well, what's your answer going to be? Well, you just killed somebody.
Yeah.
Because the basis of this thing is the willing to believe that there is a higher. Why would they go from one page right to the other now that you got to believe in God? No, they're saying, relax. Let's go over this. And as we went over this last week, how many people found it really interesting the way the book's laid out here by saying, you know what, you already have a belief system. You're already spending energy worshiping things. You're already being driven by certain ideas and emotions. Are not these the fabric of the tissue of what your life is created on? You kind of went, yeah, I'm the sum result of all my thinking and emotions coupled and driven with alcoholism. No wonder I have a problem. I have two problems here. There's my human condition I'm trying to find an answer for, and I'm being driven by alcoholism that's making my decision for me. What's that? Have a drink. I don't want to drink. Too bad. Right? And I take a drink and the drink takes a drink and now I'm gone. Anybody? So here they're saying you already have the basis of what we'll be formulating these new spiritual kit of tools along with these guidelines. We're just going to reshift them a bit, right? And what was the basis of that? It says on page 52, we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems, not alcoholism, our human problem, the same readiness to change our point of view. And they get into the bedevilments here. We see the bedevilments are a summary of what they're talking about on page 54. Right?
Yep.
Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? Question mark. Who asked? They answer it again, right? Is saying these emotions, all these things, all this thinking, and all this emotions is making your decisions for you. You're not eating lunch alone anymore. All your past is eating your lunch with you, right? You're not getting much.
Yeah.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Anybody perplexed with their own thinking and emotions here?
Yep.
How many people in constant thought about the past, the future, battle, and having arguments with people who are not even there? How many people have arguments with themselves and then they start talking out loud? The energy gets so loud that you're actually talking to yourself out loud. I can't believe the shit you're doing. And people go, who are you talking to? Never mind, it's personal. Anybody get that crazy?
Yeah. And someone pulls up next to you in traffic and you're yelling, and then you got to turn around and pretend like you're yelling at the kids in the back.
Or
and
the
there's
good thing
no one there.
is the headphones now. Oh, you must be tired. I used to have that before this shit was happening. I had more phlegm on the inside of my window than the outside. All the spit, the steering wheel all bent, and I'm just traveling alone. Just nuts, just crazy. Anybody been that crazy?
Mhm.
That's not alcoholism. That's a human condition that you need answers for. And that's what they're saying here. So they're saying, okay, lack of power. These people experience something different. I could obtain the same experience that they talk about in the spiritual appendix, that they talked about in Bill's story, the doctor's opinion, and they formulate it as experiencing this thing, that I could have a different experience and a different story. But it's not going to be your story anymore. It's going to be the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. Do you want our story? Yes or no? Because that's the only story we have to offer you. What makes you say that is the introduction to this book, right? It talked about here, right at the opening kind of page, right? Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Which is really the story of how many thousands of men and women who have recovered. Not an individual story, it's a collective story. We're all suffering from the same thing. What's that? Alcoholism. We all have the same solution, a spiritual kit of tools laid out by those who went before us. What's the main purpose of this book? Is to show us how they recovered. Not for us to recover, how they recovered. If we want what they have, not what I have, they have. What is it? A solution to alcoholism. And also in the pursuit of that, I'll have a way of living that answers all my problems. Who made that statement? Bill made that statement. The doctor witnessed this thing. There's something at work here. The message that these people have is depth and weight. There's something that each one of them have tapped into a resource of strength. Each one of them has experience with this thing, with this power that recreated their lives. That's what the doctor witnessed. Not being tapped into ourselves. So when they talk about here on page 55, where's the starting point to this thing? That was the question. It's like when you hook up your GPS, we all want the spiritual experience. We all want this experience, yes or no?
Yep.
So we punched in the location, step 12. We all want step 12, yes or no?
Yep.
Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. So if you were to punch that in your human GPS, it would go calculating, wouldn't it? Anybody punch in a location? You notice right after this says calculating what? Where you are. It needs to know where you are to get you to where you're going. You notice that? And all roads lead to the same place. All roads lead to the same. If we all punch in the GPS that we're going to this location, psychic change, spiritual experience, we're tapping into a power grid and stuff, we're getting access to that power, right? We punch that in, it would go, okay, calculating, and then it would go to where you are, where your vehicle is, wouldn't it? Yes, no? So here, this is where it's saying, here's where we're starting from. Actually,
Middle of the page. Actually, we were fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God.
not some of us, each one of us. And so last week when I asked to do that kind of exercise of going back in your life, to how many times did you have something deep down within try to redirect you, try to talk to you or give you encouragement, or try to say, hey, you know what, hang on, don't do that. That voice that you can't really put your finger on, but it was always there. How many people's had that?
Yeah.
In your darkest moments, something show up and say, hey, deep down, it's going to be okay. Why don't you give this person a call or that person a call? How many people's had that from a kid? I remember this thing. Go to steal. Don't do that. Oh, that's your cunt. No, that's something. This is my life force that has been out to protect me long before I suspected it. That life force has always been there. Anybody?
Mhm.
It's in all of us. This thing. That's why when people say, "Oh, I didn't have the jam to kill myself," you're not supposed to. Your life force overrides you. Because if your life force didn't override you, none of us would be here. Something new, there's a better story for you. There's something better than the life you've been living. Yes, no, how many people said, give this person, go there, go. And you just followed it.
Mhm.
I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't know why I'm back here 11 years in why I keep coming back here. Well, one, because no other place will have me.
Where else are you gonna go?
Where else am I going to go? Something kept on driving me back here. And God found me here. You will be located. Don't worry about it. So in all of us, it may be.
It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things.
And we read that on page 54, right?
Mhm.
How many people have that list of worships? As soon as I get, as soon as I have, as soon as I get rid of, as soon as recovery. I've assessed my problems as being this, and this. I assess my solutions as being this, and this. And we concentrate, formulate, and we move toward the obtaining of those things, and they failed utterly.
Mhm.
Anybody? So we're going to take all that same energy, thought, and we're going to redirect it along these lines. It's the same thing. Change the way what I worship, change where I spend my energy, change the course of action that I'm on. We're going to do the same thing we're already doing, but with different results. How many people like that idea better?
Yep.
How many people like that idea better? Or how many people hoping to get what they've always gotten? So the template needs to be shifted, and I can't create the shift in the template sufficient enough to create a change, okay?
Mhm. But in some form or another, it is there, for faith in a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are fact as old as man himself.
Remember that doctor talked about it? He said, to me, these things are a phenomenon. When that guy he felt reassured that he was a church member, he says, but that doesn't cut it. That doesn't cut it. Your belief system doesn't get you access. So whatever you've been doing hasn't been cutting it. Hasn't worked. If you've relapsed and you're coming back, whatever you've done previous to this has not worked.
Right.
You weren't successful. I had 3 months. No, you were lying dormant for 3 months. But the end result was the same. The shift hasn't happened sufficient enough for you to recover. The last 32 years, the shift has recovered. The problem has been removed. I no longer deal with alcoholism. What makes you say that? April 8, 1989. As the result of this course of action, my relationship with a power greater than myself, that I got access deep down within, that's become personal to me, that I rely on and develop in step 11. Right? This thing, it's with me. It's nowhere else. It's with me. I could create the utopia. This. I have the recipe for the fourth dimension of existence. The only times I don't experience this is when I want to create some chaos and pain in my life. That reminds me of the need to do this. Am I alone on that?
Yep. Nope.
God don't need to punish me. I do a great job all by myself. Eh?
Yep.
I become very in tune when I'm unsupervised. Anybody here? When I go unsupervised, it becomes very painful really fast.
Yep.
I need witness protection from me. That's what this whole thing is. I got a new handler. I just check in on a daily basis to make sure everything's kosher, right? I got a new identity. I'm okay with that because there was somebody out killing me before. They're no longer. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there.
And we did that with that exercise. How many people were kind of, wow, how many people found that really cool?
Very cool.
Right?
He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us.
How many people have thought of looking there?
No.
Oh, come up with your own idea, God. This wouldn't have been a part of that idea, would it?
Nope.
That it's the receiver is deep down within me. It's tuned into that frequency. All I need to do is locate where the tuner is, and that tuner is already connected. It's like, remember those old radios? I get close as getting close, just tune it a bit more. Boom, got it. The radio station is already tuned in for those frequencies. It's already there. I just need to access it. I didn't put that tuner in there. It was already tuned for those stations. I'm already tuned for that station. Where they say, God, this power, I'm already tuned to have access or union or relationship with this thing, this energy field within the world. People say, oh, wow, it's mind-boggling. Anybody, how many people have thought about somebody and they called you? You put the frequency out there, right? God's prayer system, long before Morse code came along, eh? I do that sometimes. I'll pray and I'll think about a sponsee and they'll call me. I said, you're in tune. You're in tune. And sometimes they'll wait a couple days, you're a little off, eh? Why? I said, I sent you a memo 2 days ago. Some of them laugh now, right? I have sponsees who go, I was just thinking about you. I said, I know, I got the memo. It boggles their mind, but why not? Why not? Right? Okay, go ahead.
In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us. We can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice.
And has it?
Yeah.
Has our testimony and the way they put this together, has it put you in a position, you know what? I'm willing to believe this thing. I'm putting all my old ideas aside, and I'm going to take this new idea this new conception of the forming or developing of a plan or an idea. Do I have a new plan? Do I have a new idea? Do I have a new conception of what I'm working toward now and what I'm hoping to achieve? Yes, no? How many people are with me here? Am I alone talking to the screen? How many people's got me muted?
Is that option available?
Okay, go ahead.
We can only clear the ground a bit if our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you.
The consciousness of your belief, where's that? The thought, the consciousness, the experience, this thing that lights up inside of you. All of them talk about the consciousness, this experience in moving from the cheddar factory into the God factory, right? Moving from your thinking, right? The sawmill, right? Down into the consciousness. What do they call that? The spiritual structure, the utopia, the fourth dimension, the peace. They talk about, the members talk about in the spirit, this is the most important factor of their life. This is the game changer. And it starts deep down within. What we're going to do now is walk you through this where you could have access to it 24/7, 365 and expand on it and build on it. And the only limitation to this will always be you. I could talk at great length of my experience with this. It boggled your mind. How do I know that? Because when these guys were talking to me about this, they were telling me shit, I thought they were nuts. But I had nowhere else to go. Right? And they had my attention because I wanted this thing that they were talking about, because the kind of crazy I was and the kind of crazy they were, I'd rather be their kind of crazy. I didn't like my kind of crazy anymore. I wanted to be experienced what they're experiencing. And I have, and so much greater. And so what they talk about here, I want to talk about this guy over here. And they talk about an experience. Right? And everybody read this, right? Hopefully you read it. And they talk about this guy who couldn't get sober. And then he had a sudden spiritual experience. Sudden, an experience, right? Remember, we're just believing this to be true, and we have an inkling of it, that we've had experiences, that there's something deep down within that's kind of motivated us. We've had moments with this guy has a profound experience that hasn't shaken. And so what they talk about here, the man recounts. We'll go with there.
What page?
56.
56. Okay. Almost bottom paragraph. This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator.
Tapped into this power source within. And how many people have been lit up in different ways from within? You just kind of, you feel like your chest is good. Like it's just, sometimes you can have so much positive energy that your eyes start to leak. Anybody have that much gratitude where you have that leakage come out of your eyes? Mm-hmm. Your spirit just pushes everything up, and it's just like, wow. And you're awestruck.
Hmm.
Anybody ever have those ones? And this guy's talking about this. So a lot of us think it's something that just overwhelmed him from within, pushed up everything from within and lit him up.
Hmm.
Like, does that kind of make sense? He went from a 30-watt bulb to a 120-watt bulb.
Pretty cool.
Right? And what it was that 120-watt bulb was always there. What happened is the dimmer switch got put right up. That's what happened. All the stuff was in the way of this experience.
Hmm.
Right? When all that stuff got removed, he got to experience the way we're meant to live as human beings. Right? Connected to source, this life force that guides us, that separates us from being animals. Right? We live in this higher order of things, right? Which is really cool, right? And he's experienced this overwhelming thing. It's mind-boggling, right? Okay, go ahead.
Thus, our friend's cornerstone fixed in place.
Fixed in place. What fixed it in place? Before it was a belief that we could build a wonderful spiritual structure. The belief that I could have what these people have. Somewhere along the line, you will have the experience that your cornerstone will be fixed in place. Why? Because you experience the presence of this thing where it becomes personal to you. And it will happen as the result of going through this course of action. Mm-hmm. We've all experienced it. It's the game changer. It's the thing that the spiritual appendix is talking about. It's what the doctor, it's what everybody said, but you'll be able to describe it in your own words, but it'll be the same experience for all of us, right? And once you experience it, is wild. And how you can always get access to it, they talk about, is not something that you think of, it's something that comes in the form of an action by just a simple act of going to work with another human being and carrying this message. That we get lit up again. Transmit. Be a part of the current. Is like being on anybody live on a farm here? Anybody remember electric fence? That current's always going there. If you want to have fun, you grab your friend by the arm and you grab that fence. He gets a bigger shock than you do. Did you know that? If you have three, because the current goes, so you're adding your energy to that end, it's pretty wild. And you get three guys, the third guy on the chain will get blown off the. I wouldn't recommend that. You statistic. Okay, go ahead.
His alcoholic problem was taken away that very night years ago.
Wow. So he's no longer dealing with alcoholism,
but
he still has the human condition. Right, that we need a solution for, and that's what we have here. Go ahead.
Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned.
See, we're gonna have when we have problems in our human lives, the part of your brain is going to go, hey, you know what? Maybe a drink. And then you'll shake that off. Bill talked about that, right? The doctor talked about easily able to control this. Before, when it happened, we'd be drinking.
Totally.
Right? At certain times, neither he or any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a what? Higher power. His relationship with a power greater than himself intervened on the ricocheted that. Wasn't able to take root. It ricocheted it. Right? Go ahead.
Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And as such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him.
Again, from inside. This inside. I don't know. Once you experience this pretty wild stuff, how we're governed. Now, thank God it's not from the cheese factory anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Why I call it a cheese factory. A lot of production and stinks, eh? No.
I've never heard it say that. That's good. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would.
Wouldn't that? How cool is that? And I've experienced that in the last 32 years here and there, right? Even though I couldn't. And I'll get into those stories some other time. Go ahead.
God had restored his sanity. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe.
How many people there?
Beaten into a place of
Circumstances. We don't have to convince you of this. That's your job.
Yeah. He humbly offered himself to his maker. Then he knew. Even so, God has restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly.
And that's the educational part. That's where we're going through. Somewhere along the time, you'll be contacted. Somewhere along the shift, and they usually talk about within the first few months. If you do this, somewhere between now and the implementing of this recipe, you will be contacted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It will become apparent to you that you're tapped into this thing. You'll suddenly realize, holy shit, I got this thing. Right? And it's like with alcoholism, you're the last one to know you had it, right? Everybody else already knew. And it's like this thing. Everybody else around you will see there's a change in you, and you'll be the last one to become aware of it. When you're the first one to become aware of it, it's we call bullshit.
Totally.
Well, how many people have gone around here trying to convince everybody how much they changed? And everybody around you are saying, well, we'll let you know. We'll let you know. When we see it, we'll let you know how much you changed, right? We're still waiting. We're hopeful. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, some of us grew into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him.
And that's what we're going to do. We're going to pursue. Where and how do we find this power? Well, that's what this book is about. We started the willingness to believe. Get in the car. Let's go. Right? How many people want to get in the car?
Yep.
Looks like we better get the bus. Jack Nicholson's bus. Remember that? How many people remember One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest here? Yeah. Remember they were in their pits, and then Jack had this idea of course of action, and they put them all, everybody on the bus. Remember that? That'd be like going on the steps, right? They take this course of action, and then they go fishing, right? And then when they were coming back, they were transformed. Remember that? How lit up there, and everybody was watching them. Hey, you people are supposed to be crazy. They don't know that anymore. They're having an experience. They're saying, wow, this is the best thing ever, right?
So cool.
But we don't have to go back to the factory. We can stay fishing. Okay. So homework this week, read how it works and see where the transition is from when we no longer are working the steps anymore. You hear people say, I work the steps every day. The steps are not meant to be worked every day. Oh, what makes you say that? Read how it works. Read how it works. Read what the purpose of the steps are. And when it shifts from having to work on that idea and what your idea shifts to, what do I end up working on then? That's what how it works is laid out. Is that cool? Does that kind of make sense? There's a
Very cool.
shift in focus. Right now, it's the steps, right? Somewhere along the line, that has to stop being the focus. A lot of people, I do 10, 11, and 12 every day. Then you don't understand what you're talking about yet. Just get a new understanding. It sounds nice though, right? If you're doing, I'm not going to go, don't stop, don't, thank you. Katie,
And
for
we're
this
done,
number.
Rob. Take it away.
Thank you, Rob.